damage. Last night's storm ripped the Acuity flag in Sheboygan. This is the largest free-flying American flag in the world. Look at this. The storm split the 340-pound flag in two. A gust of 66-mile-per-hour winds tore through that area last night.
And the iconic Acuity insurance flag, American flag there in Sheboygan that you can see right on the freeway, really for miles, was destroyed by the storms after the flag was torn in half last night.
We call it the world's tallest symbol of freedom.
So imagine the shock last night when Acuity's American flag was torn.
That is by far the most damaged I've ever seen one of our flags. Yeah, it was, I've never seen anything like it.
As if this week hadn't been dramatic enough, with protesters on the streets and anger across America, there was something else to look at. This amazing footage shows lightning strikes across the US Capitol, including the very top of the Washington Monument. It's been seen by millions online. Many have weighed in with metaphors of their own, both of the secular and the biblical variety.
Breaking overnight, we know at least 2 military members were hurt by lightning in D.C. They were out helping with protesters overnight. Authorities say they suffered non-life-threatening injuries. The lightning also struck the Washington Monument.
And I think I said to my mum last night, I'm glad I'm not going to be around in 100 years to see the sort of place we're becoming. Sounds sad, I know, sounds pessimistic. But unlike those who want to wipe away our history, or worse, to rewrite it, if you know your history, you'll know of many great civilizations of the past laid to waste because they failed to heed the lessons of time.
Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
This morning, an American cinema classic, Gone with the Wind, has been temporarily pulled by the streaming platform HBO Max.
Yates' prophetic words start to ring true. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Greg Sheridan says it's a lot to do with the push to diminish Christianity in our Western culture. He wrote this week, and I quote, that the crisis of liberalism is the crisis in the heart of our civilization. It is a vacuum where there should be belief. In what I found the most sobering comment of all, Sheridan said, the question now is whether liberalism can survive the total severing of its connections with its Christian roots. He said, I have the most serious doubts. Liberalism survives for a while because the first generation or two are imbued with Christian moral concepts and traditions. But eventually, Greg Sheridan wrote, it goes crazy, as it is demonstrably doing now.
Gone with the Wind, one of the most popular films in history. Another relic of a tainted past pulled down, this time by streaming platform HBO Max.
In a statement, HBO Max writing in part, these racist depictions were wrong then and are wrong today. Cops has been permanently dropped by Paramount after more than 30 years on the air, while A&E is removing the hugely popular Live PD.
I think it comes down to freedom of speech and art. If we start censoring people for giving the wrong opinion, what message does that give to anyone going forwards? Are we going to worry about, like, I've made 2 films. Do I need to worry about my films being removed in 100 years' time? Because it may be against what people are thinking 100 years from now. I think it's quite an extreme move.
One of our most loved British comedies, Fawlty Towers, has become the latest victim of culture censorship. It's only one episode, which references the Germans during the war. You may remember it, I certainly do. But it follows the likes of Gone with the Wind, television comedy Little Britain, Come Fly With Me, I think there's Cops in the United States and others, which, following the Black Lives Matter rallies and riots, have been banned by nervous executives from streaming services like Netflix and Stan. But where does this stuff stop? Every generation has differing moral standards, but isn't that the way we were and the way we learn about who we are now and where we're going, where we should become?
Anti-government protesters face off with security forces in central Beirut. They blame the ruling alliance for the political turmoil and economic chaos engulfing Lebanon. This area of the capital has been a front line since October, when the protest movement began against the sectarian political class which has ruled for decades.
The revolutionaries will topple the government.
Lebanon is facing its worst economic crisis in decades.
Now, one of the major changes that has quickly morphed into our daily lives during this COVID-19 is cashless spending. The supermarkets, the retailers, even the local fruit and veggie fella, they're telling us to tap or swipe no cash. We won't take it, which, by the way, just happens to be illegal, but we did our best to play along. A surge in home-delivered groceries and meals has also helped the transition massively. We've had hundreds of bank branches closed, so the pension day rush for cash has been put on hold. ATM withdrawals have collapsed overnight, so the big bankers are pushing the barrow for a cashless world in 2 years.
Late last night, Richmond, Virginia protesters brought down a statue of Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederacy. On Tuesday in Richmond, one of Christopher Columbus was toppled and dragged into a lake. Another Columbus statue met a similar fate in Minnesota. But driver Ray Cicerelli called the change political BS and said he's done with NASCAR at the end of the season.
What's called the cancel culture, when we seek to remove anything that might offend political correctness, anything we might not agree with in our modern push to rewrite history. Yesterday it was the statues. Today I started my editorial with Gone with the Wind, pulled from a US streaming service. Other shows have been removed here as well, and now Captain Cook, they say, has got to come down. Rewriting history, Gleeso, very, very dangerous territory.
Well, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn about what they think about taking down statues. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, this PC culture is out of control. As the Prime Minister said on radio this morning, it's very, very clear that this particular issue has been hijacked by extreme leftists, and yeah, they've got their sights on, you know, tearing down some of our obviously important national and significant statues. But I mean, why would we trash our history? Our history is important to us.
But first, now, I'm not old at 49, but then I'm not young either. And I think I've felt older than ever in recent days as I've watched waves of hate and loathing roll across Western countries like ours. There's a poem by Yeats. It's called The Second Coming. It was written in 1919, just at the end of the Great War, and prophetically at another time of pandemic. This time, of course, the Spanish flu. And Yeats wrote, "Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity." When George Orwell wrote his political masterpiece, 1984, many read it as an expose of the dystopian world behind the then Iron Curtain. But having read it again recently, it's got as much application to the West of today as it does to a totalitarian regime. And I quote Orwell here: "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." He wrote too, "Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered. And the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped." Orwell then wrote, "The past was erased. The erasure was forgotten. The lie became the truth." Over the weekend, as the marchers break the rules to march and the rest of us stayed home, most probably feeling like mugs for doing the right thing, I encourage you to pick up 1984 again and give it another read. Because unless we really understand where we are today and how we ended up here, I fear for our capacity to turn this around, given more and more public life is littered with weak individuals more intent on climbing the greasy pole of politics than standing up for the things that matter.
I heard a commentator referring to, he says, I don't want to call this the coronavirus anymore. I call it COVID 1984. Referring to George Orwell's, where there's newspeak and there's doublespeak and there's, using terror and fear and insecurity and creating a dependent culture. And it's interesting that when Jesus said that the greatest amongst you will be your servant, and someone once called that the Christ's upside down kingdom, that everything was really almost oxymoronic, that the first will be last, the strongest will be those who are the weakest, and so forth. And as you look at that, you realize that when man desires to be powerful, if he fulfills that desire, it's at the cost of someone else's power. That other people have to become weak in order for them to become powerful. And that's why I've always been somewhat distrustful of politicians, particularly those ones who gravitate towards greater and greater power, because ultimately, in order for them to become as powerful as they imagine they should be, they require their citizens to become weaker. And I think that we need to understand that in our own situation, when we're talking about even interaction, we were talking the other day about how our staff understands leadership roles and the hierarchy of authority and so forth, that we don't see it as me having the power to tell you what to do, as much as us basically working together.
That statement also reminds me of something that a quote that you took from another pastor and author of, sometimes we want the kingdom without the king, and God doesn't change. He's the one who has established what it means and what it looks like, and these are the rules. This is the way of, I am the way, the truth, the life, and you can't have the kingdom without the king. I think the deception says that we can, and so we try to find all of our other ways, but we're told very clearly that in time that'll be revealed, whether you are actually a child of the king or if you're just trying to sneak into the kingdom.
The greatest error is when we try to become the king. And that's where, I've talked the last couple of weeks, I've talked about what I think are really dangerous false theologies, which essentially try to convince people that they are the king and that their will can be done. And that's where, when you're in that place, I have to ask the question, do you truly know the Savior? Because if you've met him, you realize that he is the king and he is the authority and you're not, and that there's only one right response, and that's humbly submitting ourselves to his will.